Hey guys, it's Alexis, and I'm here today to give you some manga recommendations. There's a couple things I have to mention first. First is that I have read a ton of manga. I've basically been reading manga since I was like 8 or 9, so that's 10 plus years. So when I honestly say that I've read tons of manga in pretty much every single category that exists, I mean it. I tried to pick different... I'm sorry for the noises, my cat's chasing his tail around. So I tried to pick different genres of manga, but I do, in my preferences, tend to lean more towards action fantasy manga, or at least manga with like fantastic elements to it, and action manga too, because that's just more of my thing. But I did try to vary it out a little bit. And the second thing I'm going to say is that in this particular video, I'm not going to request some of the more popular manga. So in this particular video, I'm not going to request Naruto, Bleach, or Death Note, though I do still strongly recommend you read those. I do know that Naruto and Bleach are a huge commitment because they're 700 plus chapters, but they're both fantastic and they're such great stories, and I do totally suggest you read those as well, but I'm not going to particularly recommend those in this video. Alright, so I guess we should go ahead and get started. I can't make a manga recommendations video without recommending my favorite manga of all, and that is DGrayMan by Katsura Hoshino. This is set in a fictional 19th century London, and it follows our main character, Alan Walker, and Alan is an exorcist who uses this special substance called innocence to fight these demons called Akuma. And so basically Alan has innocence embedded in his left arm that allows his arm to like transform into an anti-Akuma weapon. And Alan belongs to the Black Order, which is this collection of exorcists who are fighting the Akuma. And the Akuma are being created by the Millennium Earl, who is the main villain in this story. And the only way I can describe it is this story is such a wild ride. Like, this story is about what it means to be human, what it means to fight for something, and it starts off really lighthearted. I would say the first couple of chapters are very lighthearted, but it gets very serious very fast. There are such an amazing eclectic cast of characters. The main character group in this story is my all-time favorite. They're just so fantastic, and Alan is such an amazing main character, and he goes through so much, and his character grows so much because of that. And yeah, I just highly suggest this. The story is ongoing. It's currently 220 chapters, I believe. You can read them all online, or you can buy the volumes as they're printed in America or in whatever country you live in. But this is just such a fantastic story. It's my all-time favorite. So you guys should all check out DGrayMan. Next is another one of my all-time favorite manga, and that is Tokyo Ghoul by Ishida Sui. And I have so many feelings about Tokyo Ghoul. Firstly, I just have to say that the art is just... Oh, trying to find a non-spoilery page. Woof, there are not too many of those that exist. But the art is just so beautiful, and Ishida Sui is such an amazing storyteller. And this is another manga that just has such an amazing cast of characters. So Tokyo Ghoul follows the story of Kaneki Ken, who is a young boy who one day gets invited to go on a date by this girl named Rize, and so I will just say that the date does not go as planned, and he basically, through a course of events, gets turned into a ghoul. So this is a fictionalized Japan where these creatures called ghouls exist, and basically they feast on human flesh. And so basically Kaneki goes out on this date, and through a course of events he gets turned into a ghoul. I will say that this manga does have some very gory elements to it. It's definitely very action and horror, I would say, but it's still so good, and you feel things, man. You don't come out of this without feeling some stuff, and that is just all I have to say. The next one I have to mention is Dunton URL by Karakara Kamuri. The English title of this is Laughing in the Clouds, and this tells the story of three brothers who basically like run this shrine, and they're like the figureheads and protectors of this small village. And it's so hard to explain what the story is about, but basically the Kumo brothers they like catch rogue prisoners who've escaped from this island prison that's set offshore from this small town, and it's like their job to capture them. But this story is so much more than that because it has a fantasy element to it. The whole story is set in historical Japan, so it is like a historical fiction fantasy. Historical fantasy? I don't know what you technically call that. But it's so good, and the art style is so pretty. And this is another one that has such an eclectic cast of characters. Obviously that is something I apparently very much look for when I read a manga. But you can read the whole thing online, and I would strongly suggest doing so because it's fantastic. I promised myself I would only put one sports manga on this list, and it was very hard to narrow down because there's so many fantastic ones, like Diano Ace and Kuroko no Basket, but I decided to go with Haikyuu by Furudate Haruichi, and Haikyuu is a volleyball manga, but if you don't know how to play volleyball, don't worry about it because Furudate sensei really covers the rules and the strategy and the playing of volleyball in his story. This one too I don't believe has been licensed in America yet, but you can read the whole thing online. Haikyuu tells the story of Hinata Shoyo, who is on the shorter side. For those of you who don't know, volleyball is typically a taller person's sport. But one day when he was in elementary school, he saw a game where there was a young man who was also short, and he was known as the Little Giant, and he basically was a phenomenal volleyball player. And so Hinata grew up really idolizing this guy. And so throughout middle school, Hinata did not have a very successful volleyball career. He came from a school that didn't really have a volleyball team, so he only ever played in one official match, and he lost that specific match to a powerhouse school, and through it he got to meet his rival, Kageyama Tobio. And so basically, the story is about both Hinata and Kageyama end up at this high school called Karasuno, who was once a powerhouse school but is not anymore, and they both end up at this school, and it's basically about them overcoming their differences as rivals to become this phenomenal duo at Karasuno. The next one I'm going to mention is Dazzle by Minari Endo. The Japanese title for this is actually Hachinko Yugi. I will say with this one, the only 10 volumes have been licensed in America, and they're actually up to 16 volumes, I believe, in Japan, but you can read them all online. And Dazzle tells the story of a young girl named Razel, whose father one day abruptly throws her out. Pretty much without a warning. He's basically like, here, go on a journey, and he just tosses her out. And she's like, okay. So basically she meets up with a man named Alcide, who is also kind of a loner. He's on his own, and through a course of events they begin to travel together. And honestly, this is a story that is just so, it's an epic. That's the best way I can explain it. Like, so much happens in this story. Like, trying to explain what happens in the first volume and like what the basic plot started out as is so hard because it's evolved so much into like what it is in the later stories. But this is another one that has a very odd cast of characters who are all just hilarious, and watching the main trio who travel together, like watching their interactions is just funny, but I love the art style in this one as well. It's very different to me, and it definitely, Minari Endo, as the volumes progress, her art style gets so much better, and I love to be able to see that. I highly suggest picking this one up because it's such a unique story, and it also features like magic and action, and it has a little bit of a sci-fi element to it in a specific way, but it's really good. I highly suggest it. The next one I'm going to mention is Noragami by Adachi Toka, and I love Noragami. Noragami tells the story of Hiyori Iki, who basically one day sees this guy in a black tracksuit walk out in front of a car to save a cat, and she goes after him and pushes him out of the way of the car, and basically she realizes then that she's hit by the car and her soul separates from her body, and she realizes the young man that she just saved is an unknown god named Yato, who is seeking fame and fortune as a god who is worshipped and has shrines built to him and all of this stuff. And the world of Noragami is like, it's set in modern day Japan, but it also takes place in like the heavens because it takes place with all of the other gods. And I love the mythology of the story, and seeing all of the different gods represented, and like their different dominions as gods. Noragami is also still ongoing, but you can read them in volumes or you can read them online. Though I do say that, but I also strongly suggest that you support the artist because it's very tough to be a mangaka. The next one I'm going to mention is Gentleman's Alliance Cross by Tanemura Arina. And I haven't read this one in a really long time, but I was like, oh, I need to totally have a shoujo manga on this list. And so I was kind of like going through really popular shoujo manga, and I came upon it and I was like, oh my god, how could I forget about this story? The story is so amazing. So basically it tells the story of a young girl named Hana who was basically like given to this family in return for a loan her parents had, and she is going to this really prestigious school called the Imperial Academy, and she is appointed to the student council, and the head of the student council is this young man, Shizumasa Toga, who she's been in love with for years, ever since she read the picture book he wrote. And so basically she enrolled in this academy to be close to him. So basically she gets the opportunity to like be close to him, and basically she finds out that everything is not as it seems, and that there are a lot of secrets going on amongst the student council of this school. It's definitely very shoujo because it does follow the storyline of romance between Hana and Shizumasa, but the art in this one is so pretty. That's definitely probably one of my favorite shoujo manga I've ever read, and I highly suggest it. The next one I'm going to mention is Holic by Clamp. Some of you probably have read some of Clamp's other works, such as Card Captor Sakura and Chobits, which I think are two of their more popular works. So this is Holic, and this tells the story of a young boy named Watanuki Kimihiro, who can see spirits and ghosts and stuff like that. He always has been able to. And one day he stumbles into this shop who is run by a witch named Yuko, who basically grants wishes in exchange for things that the people who are looking for the wish to be granted, things that they hold dear. And so basically she kind of like tells Watanuki, she's like, hey, if you come and work at my shop, you know, I'll help you so you don't see ghosts anymore, blah blah blah. The crazy situations that arise when people come in to Yuko's shop, and the different stories of these people who are looking to have their wishes granted. Some of them have, you know, greedy wishes, some of them have wishes that have to do with love, some of them have wishes that have to do with hiding secrets. I will mention that Holic can be read on its own, but it actually has a lot of crossover moments with another one of Clamp's stories, Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles, which was written at the same time, and they're meant to be, they can both be read completely on their own, but you can choose to read them together, and they basically weave like a bigger, grander story, but you don't have to. You can just read Holic by itself. I love the artwork in Holic. It's so beautiful. It's everything that I love about Clamp's artwork. And this is a little bit more darker. I think this is probably the darkest story that Clamp has, which is why me personally, I'm drawn to it because that's just more my style. Next one I'm going to mention is my favorite shonen ai story I've ever read, and that is Hana no Mizushiro by Takurai Rihito. And this story is about a boy who is a college student, and he basically gets a job working at this like botanist shop, and it's about it's basically a story about him falling in love with the boy, or the other young man who works at the shop with him, who is dealing with a lot of emotional baggage. And it's basically about Yoichi, who's the main character, trying to help Misaki, who's this other young boy, kind of overcome the difficult stuff that he's dealing with, all the while he's falling in love with him. And it's such a beautiful story, and it has a companion story that I promise you will legit make you cry. But Hana no Mizushiro, I mean, I've read it so many times now because it's not that long of a story. I don't even think it's 20 chapters. It's not that long of a story, it's very short, but it's just so beautiful to me, and the art style is so gorgeous, and I just strongly suggest everybody checking it out, especially if you're looking for an LGBT story. Of course, shonenai means boys love in Japanese, so it's a story about two boys falling in love, and it's so beautiful. I will warn that I do think that there are I think that there's some sex scenes in the epilogue chapters, but those aren't important to read to the story, but they are in there, so I will warn for that. But it's still just an absolutely beautiful story, and I still strongly suggest it to everybody. The last one I'm going to suggest is a story that is very sentimental to me because it's actually the first manga series I sat down and read start to finish, and that is Anne Freaks by Yui Kotegawa. And this basically tells the story of three young people who are all unified by a really terrifying secret. There's Yuri, and these aren't spoilers, by the way, these are literally written on the back of the first volume, so I'm not spoiling anything for you. Yuri, a young man who killed his own mother, Mitsuba, who will do anything to take vengeance on the person who killed his sister, and Anna, who is a mysterious assassin. And so this story is kind of like a psychological thriller, but it's so good, and it's basically about, there's this organization who is pulling all of the strings, and Anna is out to basically get rid of this organization, and Yuri and Mitsuba basically gets trapped in this with her. Of course, I will say that this one does have some gory elements in that aspect, because there's a lot of fighting scenes and stuff like that. But there's only 4 volumes in this manga series. It's very, very short, but I think that this is a very profound story. It always really stuck with me, and like I said, yeah, it's very sentimental to me because it's the first manga series I ever sat down and actually read. But it's really fantastic, and I suggest you all give it a try. That ended up being a whole lot longer than I intended it to be, but I love manga. I've been reading manga, like I said, for 10 plus years, and so I couldn't really narrow it down because there's so many great stories I really wanted to recommend to you guys. But if you've read any of these, please, I would love to talk to you guys about them. And also, if you're interested, you want a little bit more information, I can certainly provide that as well. But you guys should let me know down below what are maybe some of your favorite manga stories as well, because I always like to pick up new recommendations. You guys have a great day.